COVID-19 has been challenging and also exposing the inequalities in education across the board, whether it be access to online education or not being able to go to class. Well, a Telkom Foundation study has now shown that the pandemic is having a particularly bad effect on the learning of crucial subjects, for example, maths and science. So let's find out more on why that is and what we can try and do to alleviate problem. Foundation CEO Sarah Mthintso. Sarah, morning. Good to have you with us here on eNCA. So why is maths and science falling behind the curve here?
Good morning. I think what's important to state up front is that the Telkom Foundation support quite a number of learners across the country in high school. Part of the problem we picked up when we started with this investment in education is that by the time a learner comes to grade 8, they already have foundational deficiencies. So they struggle with content they would have missed in intermediate. So by the time they get to high school, they already are battling. So COVID has not made the situation any easier. What has happened with COVID is that children have missed out on contact classes, they've missed out on learning dosage, so they've not been able to catch up, and therefore the impact of COVID has really been quite huge because, as I said, children have struggled with intermediate content. So just missing out on learning has become a big issue.
I imagine, especially with subjects like maths and science. Maths I struggled with at school, and I was still able to be in class with classmates, go for extra maths lessons after school, during break, all of that is now taken away because of COVID-19. So, Sarah, what are we going to try and do to fix this? Tell me about the foundation. We know the problem. Now we've got to try and fix it, don't we?
Yeah, so part of what we've done as our strategy is to really just try and understand the depth of the problem. So we do diagnostic assessments with our learners just to try and understand how big the gap is. And once we understand, and it's very tailor-made, very individualized, we then are able to look at each child and be able to tailor-make the solution to solving that particular problem for that particular child. I think the fact that we've also deployed ICT solutions in schools has also been very useful, because it allows the children outside the school to also just self-regulate and self-learn. And we've seen a bit of a change with children who have access to computers, access to connectivity, access to content. Whilst it is not easy for a child to transition from just having a teacher in front of the class to learning on their own, we've seen that they are able to get some education and able to improve. And of course, technology does not replace what happens in the classroom, but it really does enable a child who is unable to go to school due to COVID.
And when we talk about it having an effect on maths and science, Sarah, are we talking about students or pupils completely failing the subjects, or just not doing as well as they should be doing? Or are we looking at a disaster come end of year exams?
Well, I don't think it's a disaster. I think it's a bit of both. There are kids who obviously struggle, as I said, would have struggled right from intermediate phase, but there are kids who generally would do well, but because they've missed out on so much of schooling, they aren't able to do as well as they should. So things like algebra, things like geometry, where you really have to have a teacher or someone in front of you teaching you, becomes a lot harder for children to learn on their own. And you must remember that teachers themselves in many of these schools aren't really prepared for, or weren't really prepared for, remote learning and teaching. And so it becomes a bit difficult for a teacher to try and find themselves in that situation and have to teach a child for the first time using remote resources. So we've also had to work with teachers just to help them understand how they can prepare lessons, because it's fundamentally different to standing in front of a class and preparing a lesson and delivering a lesson. So we've had to work with both teachers and learners to make sure that the delivery of teaching makes it a lot easier for children to learn.
Yeah, it's a difficult subject, maths, and I suppose so is science at the best of times. Now try and do it online as well, with teachers getting used to new technology. Sarah, I've got about 30 seconds or so left with you. Just tell us if someone's watching this morning, perhaps a small school, perhaps as a teacher, a principal who thinks, actually, I need to have a word with the CEO of the foundation. Sarah, where do we find you? How does someone contact you if they want to get involved and help or use your services?
So we have a website. We have the Telkom Foundation website that provides a lot of information about what we do. So if people want to get hold of us, they can do so. We also have quite a number of, we've got a huge presence on social media. They can follow us on our Telkom Twitter handle, Telkom Facebook, Telkom Instagram, and we will then be able to engage with them from that level. But yeah, we do help quite a number of schools across the country.
Oh, it's good news, I think, especially for the matriculants. They're going to need all the help they can get as we get into those end-of-year exams. Not just the matrics, also grade 8, 9 as well before they get to matric. All right, Sarah Mthintso, what a pleasure. Thanks for joining us here on eNCA, CEO of the Telkom Foundation. Papers, let's take